Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Our focus is on the crucial meeting that has taken place in India's national capital, New Delhi. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have held bilateral talks at the Hyderabad House. At the meeting, Prime Minister Modi has stated that India is not neutral as far as the war between Russia and Ukraine is concerned, and is on the side of peace as well. Meanwhile, President Putin has expressed his gratitude to the Indian Prime Minister for India's focus on peace initiative. Let's revisit the statements made by Narendra Modi.
How to go about doing things. As far as bilateral relations are concerned, I think there will be opportunity for us to think in terms of not just restricting ourselves to the oil deal, but also defense-related issues. We do need the S-400
tech and artificial intelligence. We have very close and trusting cooperation in the military and technical area, and we are planning to move forward in all of these areas. This once again underscores the level and the trust of our relationship. Our teams have done a great work before this visit. They have prepared a great number of documents for us. We have an opportunity to talk in more detail about some of them. I'm sure that we'll have a very fruitful working day.
All right, there of course we've seen what the Russian president has had to say. We'll try to get the Indian Prime Minister's remarks as well. Meanwhile, with us on the broadcast is NewsX World Senior Executive Editor Megha Sharma. She's joining us live. Thank you so much for taking out time. And of course, speaking to us, walk our viewers through what exactly transpired in this particular meeting. Ukraine was a key focus, but that's not all. Ties with regards to artificial intelligence, defense, civil nuclear sector. All of this was also raked up by the Russian president.
Yes, let's first focus on the press statements that were made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin. Of course, this happened right before the bilaterals started off. So they right now are... So this happened right before Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin went on and held their bilateral talks. Those bilateral talks are continuing right now. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi opened up that statement that addressed to the press and to President Putin, talking about Ukraine. Very important, very crucial. Remember, Russia has been at war with Ukraine for the past several years. In 2022 is when this started off. There had been frictions that have been seen between Ukraine and Russia since 2014, and even prior to that, Prime Minister Modi went on and said that India stands for peace. He went on to say that Russia understands India's perspective and India is backing for peace to prevail in the world, and in particularly Ukraine and Russia, the conflict that carries on. He's spoken about how India is not neutral, as opposed to the commentary, the narrative that has been built by the West, by European countries time and again, trying to pressurize India, trying to push India to have conversations with President Putin to end this war. In fact, there have been these calls that have been made on public fora by envoys, by leaders, hoping Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to speak to President Putin during his visit to India in New Delhi. That is a 2-day visit. So that I think that sort of sums it up. Like, while we are talking about India-Russia bilateral ties, trade and investments, reducing the trade deficit with Russia, most important over here being the global message that has been sent out by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So that's important, a global message being sent out by the Indian Prime Minister to the rest of the world, putting India its foot down, saying that India has propagated, has advocated peace in the region in Eastern Europe, and it continues to do so. He's also gone ahead and defended the government of India's stance that it is not neutral in this war. It is backing for peace to be restored, but by way of negotiations. And while when we talk about President Putin's remarks after Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke, he thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for this decades-old relationship that India and Russia share. He spoke about how the substance of the talks that are taking place and are currently at this point of time ongoing between the two leaders is very important, very crucial for both countries. A new chapter in the bilateral relations, 23rd annual India-Russia summit that is taking place. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was last year in Russia and he was received warm-heartedly by President Putin, reciprocity being shown by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his Russian counterpart's visit as well. So I think now that the tone and tenor has been set, a global, a statement that is going to garner global headlines that has been made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, that has been completed. There are now going to be a number of those bilateral level talks when we talk about trade, investment, like I already mentioned, space exploration, space cooperation, civil nuclear cooperation. We talk about labor mobility. We are talking about artificial intelligence. We are talking about agriculture, pharmaceutical. These are all the aspects on which both countries are going to work together, that are led by their leaders. And of course, MOUs, 20 plus of those MOUs that are going to be signed.
Indeed, Megha, you did mention the fact that President Putin had highlighted that the relationship was a decades-old relationship that India and Russia enjoy. That's not all. It's Prime Minister Modi and President Putin who also enjoy a relationship that's almost that spanned 25 years. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister did recall his 2001 visit to Russia as well, when before he, of course, took up the mantle as the Chief Minister of Gujarat. He was a part of a delegation that was being led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Russia. We've seen that bonhomie still endure, especially with what happened at the tarmac yesterday. What further insights can you share with our viewers? How does this bonhomie then shape the bilateral relationship, the strong nature of which we see despite sanctions being slapped on India 50% up until now?
Yes, there have been a number of oil companies from Russia that have traveled as part of a delegation that has been brought in by President Putin, which includes Rosneft. Rosneft is one of the two oil companies from Russia that have been heavily sanctioned by United States of America, and which has had a direct impact on India's energy needs, because a number of oil companies here in India, including Reliance, that import oil from Russia in large quantities, large volumes, have had to reduce this. This has obviously ended up being reflected in the trade volume, oil trade volume between Russia and India, where Russia has also proposed that there could be further discounts that could be offered to Indian companies to fulfill India's energy needs. So would there be an announcement made in this regard, a further reduction in prices, oil prices for Indian companies to be insulated from the US trade tariffs? Remains to be seen. But Russia has taken a stance, and so has India, that these oil tariffs that have been imposed unilaterally by United States are illegal. There has been no endorsement, no resolution that has been passed in the United Nations Security Council that would make it a legal mandate. And therefore, Russia has outrightly come out and rejected these tariffs on its oil companies. But at the same time, there is, of course, a very important aspect of India-Russia trade relations, India-Russia civil nuclear cooperation, because we saw yesterday there was the State nuclear agency, state nuclear corporation from Russia that sent the first tranche of nuclear fuel to Kudankulam in Tamil Nadu. There is 6 nuclear plants in Kudankulam where India is working in close cooperation with Russia. Russia has been assigned to provide nuclear fuel and of course high-tech exchange for the development of these nuclear reactors, and this is one of the 7 tranches of nuclear fuel that has been delivered by the Russian state corporation. This was in alignment with the US President Donald Trump's visit yesterday in Delhi. So that's completed, and in fact statements coming in from President Trump as well in earlier, and his secretary Dmitry Peskov talking about how this cooperation goes beyond Russia providing nuclear capabilities by way of fuel and core components for nuclear reactors, small modular reactors for India, but at the same time exchanging technical know-how, at the same time transferring technology, which is going to further build India-Russia relations to even, higher heights. So civil nuclear cooperation, we've spoken about oil, that has been a contentious issue globally, making headlines, affecting India-Russia oil trade, but at the same time, the massive trade deficit that India faces. $5 billion is the export of Indian goods and services to Russia, vis-a-vis this massive trade deficit that is hugely in favor of Russia. You know, $63 billion of that $68 billion total trade between India and Russia. Russia exports those $63 billion worth of goods. Primarily, it includes oil and defense, as can be expected. That has been the norm for the past several decades. But here, India is, and with full support of Russia, looking to reduce this imbalance, reduce this gap, and there is a trade target of $70 billion that has been now projected, pledged up until 2030. So it's not a large gap from $68 billion to $100 billion to be completed in 5 years. Should not be a difficult goal to achieve. But these are some of the aspects on which, some of the key aspects on which both leaders are going to be talking, holding those bilateral talks even as we speak, and of course eagerly awaited are those 20 of those MOUs and intergovernment agreements that are going to be signed, and of course hugely awaited is the concluding speeches, the joint press statements that Prime Minister Modi and President Putin are going to be making, encapsulating what their talks were all about and what the future holds for India-Russia relationship.
Indeed, Megha, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time, of course. So you've been very busy on the field covering this high-profile state visit since early this morning. Of course, encapsulating what has taken place up until now in a very comprehensive manner and laying it down in a simple and lucid manner for all our viewers. On that note, there's another statement that President Putin has just made a while back. He's emphasized that both countries must move forward in their relationship. He's highlighted AI, the aircraft sector, military and space as key areas of cooperation between India and Russia. Meanwhile, with us on the broadcast are two very special guests. Joining us is Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi, International Relations and Defense Expert, and also Professor Rohan Gunaratne, International Affairs Expert from Singapore. I'd like to rope in Colonel Sirohi first into the discussion. You know, there's been a lot of talk about, the S-400s, whether Russia would offer the S-500s, the Su-57s as well. We do know that the nature of warfare is changing. We've seen it in the Russia-Ukraine war. The fact that drones are being increasingly used. We've also seen it in Operation Sindoor when Pakistan had used Turkish-made drones to not just attack our military installations but our civilians as well. In light of that, and with the US also offering the F-35s, should India go ahead with this deal? Do you think we will do that, or would we then focus more on building our own drone capabilities and cooperation as far as this is concerned?
Absolutely, Priya, what you have brought out is absolutely correct. Now, there are two, three things which are very, very important, keeping the current scenario in mind after Operation Sindoor. During Operation Sindoor, we have seen two important weapon systems which have helped us to achieve the success during those 4 days of war. First was the BrahMos missile, with the help of which we struck all the air bases in Pakistan, total 11 air bases, and special was the Karyana Hills. Now, number two was the air defense system, that was S-400, which played very important role in downing all the drones and other missiles which were struck from Pakistan and which could not reach the target. So these two weapon systems have done extremely well. Now, keeping the threat in mind, and now the threat what we are talking about is over 3.5 front, that is Pakistan, China and Bangladesh. So if we have to fight on all the three fronts, we definitely require more S-400, we definitely require S-500 and Su-57. Why? Because China has already offered J-35 to Pakistan, approximately 40 aircrafts. If Pakistan has those aircraft, which are fifth generation aircraft, then it is mandatory and it is very, very important for us to go in for S-57. Now, as regard F-35 is concerned, which Mr. Donald Trump had offered to us as soon as he became the President of America, J-35, the problem basic is, firstly, there is no doubt that it is much better weapon system or much better aircraft than S-57, but there are a number of things which we have to look into it. First is the cost is very, very high. Number two, the maintenance is very, very high. Number three, there is no guarantee that the spare parts, if required in future, will be given by Americans, because we can't trust them. And fourthly is that they are not going to offer you the technology. Now, as regard the S-57 is concerned, Russia is going to offer you a cheap aircraft. They are going to offer you the maintenance. They will offer you the technology so that we can go in for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And in that case, I think it is very, very important that till we get our own fifth generation aircraft, it is very, very important to fill the gap. And second is because of the going out of MiG-21, there is a wide gap in Air Force regarding the fighter aircrafts are concerned. So it is very, very important for us to consider buying S-57 from Russia. So that is what PI is.
All right, I'd like to rope in Professor Gunaratne into this discussion as well. Prime Minister Modi, interestingly, as I mentioned earlier, he did not just call the Russian president a visionary leader. He's also recalled the 2001 visit that he had made to Moscow, and the fact that both leaders' ties, and he was not even chief minister at that time, he was just a part of the delegation that Atal Bihari Vajpayee, our former prime minister, had led. But it's since that time that both President Putin and now Prime Minister Modi cultivated a relationship. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen the optics as well on the tarmac. When Prime Minister Modi went to receive President Putin, he hugged him there and they shared a car ride, reminiscent of what transpired in Tianjin at the sidelines of the SCO summit. I wanted to understand from you to what degree does this bonhomie ensure the enduring nature of India-Russia ties?
The personal chemistry between the two leaders is evident. But one must also understand that India and Moscow has a very long relationship compared to India-US relationship. India built the relationship with the US only after 1990, because India was within the Cold War, the Soviet sphere of influence. So what we are seeing is a return of India again to re-engage very closely with the Russians, especially because of the challenges New Delhi is now facing with the Trump administration. Of course, The Americans will be very annoyed and disappointed, and the Europeans will be very annoyed and disappointed about India's relationship with Russia because of the Ukraine war, but also the multipolarity that is taking place today in the world. But what is important for India is to work with all partners to build its capacity and capability. Today, there are actually three superpowers. There's the Russians, the Chinese, and the Americans. Of course, India will be a superpower, but it will take more time. India will have to build the economic capabilities that will translate to military capabilities where it will rise in the coming decade as a superpower.
All right, with that, I'd like to thank you, Professor Gunaratna, as well as Colonel Siroi, for taking out time and, of course, sharing your analysis and insights. On that note, viewers, we're tracking further developments from India itself. We're learning that Indian Airlines, Indigo in particular, is facing ongoing disruptions. These disruptions have entered their fourth consecutive day, with over 500 cancellations today alone. This has brought the total number of cancelled flights to over 1,100. Delhi airport has been hit the hardest, with all Indigo departures cancelled until midnight. The chaos has caused airfares to surge, with passengers on other airlines like SpiceJet and Akasa Air reporting price hikes of up to 3 times the normal fares. A Delhi to Mumbai flight on Akasa Air now costs 24,000 rupees. As passengers scramble for alternatives, complaints about poor communication and refund delays are growing. The airline's operational challenges are also under scrutiny from aviation authorities, with the DGCA closely monitoring the situation at the moment. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Vandana Singh, aviation expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you what has driven this large-scale disruption. We're learning that cumulatively over the last 4 days, 1,100 flights have been cancelled.
Yes, just a moment. Let me just park the car.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Firstly, thank you, Pia, for having me on your show. And since Tuesday, in fact, day 2, and today we are on day 5, I've been saying that this is going to take the entire, shall I say, week. So coming back to the cause is the kicking in of the second phase of the implementation of the FDTL norms by the DGCA. And this is not something that was, coming out of the blue. This is something that was known for last 2 years, that the FDTL norms will kick in. And Indigo should have been well prepared with its crew resource management, with its pilots, or with its entire human resources. Now, the problem is that Indigo is running on a very lean, mean, thin strategy that they have, which is mentioned in their press release also. Nothing wrong with it. But what is wrong is the fact that they had a hiring freeze of pilots. That there is too many deadhead crew pilots flying all over to take aircraft from point A to point B. That goes to show that there is a pilot. Have 48 hours mandatory rest time for the pilots, because it has to also address the pilot fatigue risk management. So all of it was very software glitches, of course, were already fixed. That there are ATC issues, I think this is not the real thing. The real thing is clearly pilot shortage, and they should have had addressed it much before. In fact, now in the winter schedule that kicked in on October 26th, it was 846 flights were added, 6% more for the holiday season. Now, my question is, why add when you don't have the crew to fly them, when you don't have pilots to fly them, and you have so much of deadhead crew flying up and down? Look at their fatigue. So it is not something that, they should have caught them by surprise. It has not come out of the blue. They were totally unprepared. They should have been proactive with their hiring. They should have made sure their manpower is in place, and they should have taken this very seriously. I see a very lackluster attitude from Indigo over here, ma'am. Over to you.
A quick follow-up regarding that, because we do know that Delhi airport has been the hardest hit. We also know that Delhi airport is the domestic hub airport. It's the airport through which a lot of flights are then routed to other parts of the country. What sort of fallout can we then expect?
You can imagine the fallout. You can imagine a Raipur Delhi ticket is costing 21,000. A Bangalore Delhi ticket today evening 8 p.m. is costing 68,000 INR. You could go abroad, have a holiday, and come back in that much. So that is the kind of fallout that's happening. That the costs are running through the roof. That the passengers are absolutely harassed, and we are in a situation where we are in a duopoly situation with Indigo and Air India, and it's time that healthy competition be brought in. It's time that this duopoly is broken, and it's time that there are more, ways for people to commute. People are even now away from other that the whole will go before this mess seems to sort of calm down a bit, and scheduling is coming back to proper. It's going to take time, but they were not very say that.
All right, ma'am. With that, I'd like to thank you. I'm really running short on time, but I'd like to thank you, of course, for taking out time from your schedule and sharing your perspective with our viewers on this bubbling crisis. On that note, viewers, we dip into a quick short break. Stay tuned on NewsX World.